Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked into a room and felt like you had to prove something, like the only way to be heard was to speak louder, move faster, be more, and yet, the more you did, the less control you seemed to have? Like somehow, the ones saying the least were the ones pulling all the strings. It's frustrating, right? Because the world tells you, be confident, speak up, take control. But every time you try, it feels like you're burning out just trying to keep up. And maybe, just maybe, you've started to wonder, what if real power doesn't come from noise at all? What if the person who holds the most control doesn't raise their voice, doesn't compete for attention, doesn't even need to explain themselves? They just sit there, calm, still, and everyone else starts adjusting around them. I want to talk to you, the one who's tired of being pulled into emotional storms, the one who's done with reacting to every jab, every glance, every ego contest, because somewhere deep down, you know this power isn't in domination, it's in discipline. Influence doesn't come from proving yourself, it comes from mastering yourself. This isn't about playing games. It's not about manipulation or trickery. It's about sovereignty, being the one person in the room who doesn't need to chase validation because they've already anchored themselves so deeply, nothing can move them. That's Stoicism, not a trend, not an aesthetic, but a mental weapon forged in silence, sharpened through solitude, and carried without a need for applause, because the one who speaks last often controls the direction, and the one who feels most deeply, but acts most deliberately, always commands the room. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 9 unbreakable rules. Not rules to dominate others with aggression, but rules to dominate yourself, your emotions, your urges, your reactions. Because when you master that, you become untouchable. You don't win by shouting. You win by seeing what others miss while staying so calm. They can't even read your face. So, if you're tired of being misunderstood, tired of people walking over your silence like it means weakness, tired of giving away your energy to people who don't deserve it, then this is for you. You're not too soft. You're not too quiet. You've just been trying to fight in a world that only rewards noise while you were built to move through silence. And that's exactly what we're going to reclaim. Let the loud ones keep performing. Let them burn out chasing applause. You're here to build presence, not attention. To outsmart, not outshine. To lead, without ever needing to say, follow me. Because once you start playing the long game, the room starts adjusting to you. Welcome to rule number 1. Master the power of calm. Be the eye of the storm. Let me tell you something most people won't admit. Calmness is rare, painfully rare. Not because it's impossible, but because most of us were never taught how to hold it. We were taught how to perform, how to defend, how to react, but not how to breathe when everything inside is screaming to explode. Let me ask you, when was the last time someone disrespected you and you didn't feel the need to prove your worth in that moment? When was the last time someone challenged you publicly and you were still able to sit there, still, quiet, unreadable, without letting your pride jump in and speak first? That right there is the beginning of power. See, the world teaches you that confidence is loud, that control looks like dominance, that strength is about how quickly you clap back, how sharply you speak, how hard you push. But Stoicism whispers something different. Real strength is restraint. Real power is peace under pressure. Most people react. They walk into conversations already tense, already defensive, already rehearsing a comeback to an insult that hasn't even happened yet. Their nervous systems are hijacked, their egos are on edge, and that's why they lose before the game even begins. But calm is different. Calm is what you train for when no one's watching. It's built in the quiet moments. When you wake up and don't touch your phone, when you sit with your thoughts and let them swirl without acting on them, when you breathe through frustration instead of lashing out, when you write down what triggered you instead of pretending you're fine. And it's not about being numb. It's not about being passive. Calmness doesn't mean you don't feel it. It means you don't flinch. It means you can walk into a heated room and still hear your own heartbeat. It means someone can insult you and you still get to choose not to respond. It means you no longer give strangers the remote control to your peace of mind. Think of calm like armor. Not the kind that shuts people out, but the kind that makes you bulletproof to chaos. Because here's the truth, people fear what they can't read, and people follow what they can trust. When you're the calmest person in the room, people listen more closely when you finally speak. Your words land deeper. Your silence carries weight. Your presence changes the temperature of the space you enter. Let me give you something practical. The next time someone tries to provoke you, pause. Not because you're weak, but because your stillness is your signal. You don't get to decide how I feel. I do. The next time you're in a tense conversation, try this. Speak slower. Breathe deeper. Watch their reactions instead of defending your own. Notice how the energy shifts. Calmness is leverage. It's how you gain information when everyone else is leaking theirs. It's how you play the long game when everyone else is burning out trying to win moments. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." Translation: you don't suffer because of what happened. You suffer because of how quickly you let it own your emotions. So what if, just for today, you chose stillness, not silence, out of fear, but calmness rooted in confidence, the kind of presence that makes people lean in because they don't know what you're thinking, but they know it matters. I'm not here to tell you to become emotionless. I'm here to remind you, you are not your anger. You are not your fear. You are not your insecurity. You are the one who gets to observe it all and still choose your response. Because when you master calm, you don't just survive the battle, you own the battlefield. Rule number 2, listen to win, not to reply. Silence is not weakness. It's reconnaissance. Let me ask you something. When someone speaks to you, are you really listening, or are you just waiting for your turn to talk? It's not judgment. It's just something most of us do without realizing it. We listen to respond. We listen to defend. We listen to prove we're right. But almost no one listens to learn, to observe, to understand what's not being said. And that is where power hides. There's a reason the Stoics spoke so little and listened so carefully, because they understood people expose themselves when they speak. Their words carry more than ideas. They carry fears, patterns, insecurities, desperation. The person who speaks first often gives away their strategy. They show their cards too early. They reveal what matters to them, what they want you to believe. And if you're not paying attention, you'll miss the opportunity completely. But when you wait, when you allow silence to do the work, they keep talking, they over-explain, they overreach, and they end up telling you everything you needed to know. You don't have to interrogate them. You just have to be present enough to notice what they're unintentionally giving away. Let me give you an example. You're in a negotiation. Most people rush to speak first, to name their price, to explain their value, to justify their ask. But what if you didn't? What if you simply said, "Tell me what you're looking for"? Then you let the silence breathe. Watch what happens. They start to fill the gap. They start giving you insight, what they really want, what they're afraid to lose, and, most importantly, what they assume about you. That's leverage. Now, I get it. Silence can be uncomfortable. We've been conditioned to think if we're not talking, we're losing. But that's not true. In silence, you gather intelligence. In noise, you reveal weakness. The ones who can't tolerate silence usually have something to hide. Their own insecurity won't let them rest. They rush to fill the space with words because they fear what your silence might mean. So here's what I want you to remember. Let others fall in love with their own voice. You fall in love with information, because power belongs to the one who knows the most, not the one who talks the most. Let's talk practically. You don't need to be a monk. You don't have to sit in complete silence with a blank face. You just have to change why you're listening. Not to argue, not to fix, but to understand. Watch their tone, their choice of words, where they speed up, where they hesitate, what they repeat, what they avoid. That's the gold. That's what Stoic listening really is. It's not passive, it's investigative. It's not disinterested, it's deeply intentional. It's not about silence for the sake of looking mysterious. It's silence because you're playing a longer game. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Receive without pride, let go without attachment." When you listen without ego, you stop taking things personally and start seeing things clearly. And clarity, that's what turns average people into strategic thinkers. Here's something subtle that might help. Next time someone shares something with you, don't immediately comment, correct, or even praise. Instead, pause. Tilt your head slightly. Ask, what makes you say that? Or how did you come to that conclusion? Watch them unpack their thoughts. Watch their body language shift. People aren't used to being asked why they think what they think. And most of the time, they don't even know the answer. That's when the truth starts to unravel. You learn more by giving people room to talk, and even more by being patient enough to really hear them. That's not manipulation, that's awareness. And in a world obsessed with shouting, awareness is your quiet superpower. You don't need to interrupt to be seen. You don't need to argue to be respected. Let your questions do the work. Let your attention be the sharpest tool in the room. The Stoics knew that those who speak less often see more, and when the time finally comes for you to respond, your words will carry weight. Not because they're loud, but because they're earned. So be the one who listens longer than expected, who pauses before replying, who doesn't rush to be clever or correct. Be the one who watches, really watches. And when you do speak, you won't need to convince. You'll just confirm what you already know. Rule number 3. Stay unreadable. Your silence is not weakness. It's precision. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever walked away from a conversation and thought to yourself, why did I react like that? Why did I show so much? Why did I let them see it got to me? Maybe your voice cracked. Maybe your face gave it away. Maybe your body tensed just enough for them to notice. And in that moment, you felt exposed. If that's ever happened to you, you're not alone. We live in a world that teaches us to speak up, show passion, be expressive. But here's the problem: when your emotional state is public property, your power becomes negotiable. Because when they can read you, they can predict you. When they can predict you, they can control you. And that's where the quiet war is lost. Not with words, but with visibility. But there's another way, a greater way, and it starts with learning how to become unreadable, not emotionless, not robotic, just unshakeable. See, the Stoics didn't numb themselves. They didn't pretend nothing mattered. They simply refused to let the world control their inner weather. Marcus Aurelius said, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength, and that strength, it starts on your face. Your face is a battlefield. Your tone is a signal tower. Your posture is a billboard, and most people walk through life broadcasting every emotion they feel in real time: anger, insecurity, jealousy, doubt. You don't need to do that anymore. Instead, you learn to sit still when things get heated. You breathe low when your ego wants to rise high. You practice the pause, not just in speech, but in expression, not to hide from life, but to stop giving life the ability to hijack you. Because here's what most people don't realize. The one who can't be read can't be played. And when someone can't figure out what's going on inside you, they hesitate. They second guess. They become cautious. And in that hesitation, you gain ground. Let me paint a picture. You're in a high-pressure meeting. Someone challenges you. They're waiting, watching, just hoping you'll flinch. If your eyebrows rise, your lips tighten, your hands fidget, they've got you. They'll adjust their attack to the emotional signal you just gave them. But if you sit there, jaw relaxed, eyes steady, breath controlled, you become unreadable, unshakeable. And that scares them more than any argument ever could. That's not manipulation. That's mastery. You don't owe your nervous system to every passerby. You don't owe your vulnerability to anyone who hasn't earned your trust. You owe it to yourself. To become the one who decides when and how your emotions are shown. Here's how you start one. Relax your face in conversation. If something surprises or offends you, don't react immediately. Breathe. Pause. Tilt your head slightly. Let them wonder. Speak slowly. Speed is often a symptom of insecurity. Slowness, when intentional, communicates control. San. Hold eye contact, not with aggression, but with calm curiosity. You're not trying to dominate. You're trying to understand. C. Don't correct people right away. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Let them believe what they want for now. When you adopt this posture, not physically, but emotionally, you become less about proving and more about positioning. You become someone others can't figure out. And what people can't figure out, they respect, or fear, or both. Remember, unpredictability is not chaos. It's strategy. It's giving up the need to be emotionally obvious so you can become emotionally sovereign. Because you're not here to be read like a book. You're here to write your own story on your own terms. And if someone wants to understand what drives you, they'll have to do the work. They'll have to earn that level of access, because you no longer give it away for free. And when you show up like that, grounded, calm, unreadable, you shift the power dynamic in every room you enter. Not because you're trying to control people, but because you've finally stopped letting them control you. So stay unreadable. Not because you're hiding, but because you're choosing. Choosing when to speak, when to show, when to reveal. And most of the time, you won't need to, because when your presence carries quiet power, your silence becomes the loudest thing in the room. Rule number 4, influence without force. True power whispers, it never shouts. Have you ever been in a conversation where someone pushed so hard to prove they were right that you immediately shut down, not because they were wrong, but because you felt cornered? That's what force does. It doesn't inspire, it pressures, and pressure, even when it's logical, rarely leads to lasting change. Now, I want you to think about the opposite. A moment when someone simply asked a thoughtful question. They didn't push, didn't preach. They just said something like, "Have you ever looked at it this way?" And suddenly, your mind opened, not because they forced you to think different, but because they invited you to. That is influence. And Stoics mastered it without ever needing to raise their voice. See, control is about domination. It's about bending others to your will. It's about being right now, at all costs. But influence is subtle, patient. It lets the seed grow in them, not on top of them. Stoic power doesn't dominate rooms. It shapes them quietly. Marcus Aurelius didn't scream to be followed. He led with reason, not rhetoric. With presence, not pressure. And that's why people trusted him, because they felt safe, not small, in his presence. Here's the mistake most people make when they learn something powerful. They try to deliver it like a weapon, a brilliant argument, a perfect quote, a killer fact. They think if they just speak strong enough, the other person will see the light. But the opposite usually happens. The harder you push, the more resistance you meet, because no one wants to feel like they're being outsmarted or outranked in conversation. So instead of saying, "You should do this," you say, "What do you think would happen if we tried it this way?" That shift is everything. You've moved from commanding to collaborating, from pressure to partnership, from ego to invitation. And here's the magic. When people think the idea was theirs, they will protect it, defend it, own it, run with it, even if it started with you. So no, this isn't manipulation. It's wisdom. It's understanding how fragile the human ego really is. And instead of stepping on it, you step around it. Now let's go deeper, because there's another layer to this, one most people miss. To truly influence someone, you have to let go of the need to be seen as right. You have to stop trying to win every conversation. And that's not easy, especially when you know you're right. But the Stoic doesn't care about winning arguments. He cares about shifting direction. So when someone challenges you, instead of saying, "You're wrong," you say, "That's one way to see it. I've been looking at it through this lens lately." What you've done is subtle but powerful. You've changed the frame of the conversation. You're no longer fighting inside their narrative. You've pulled the focus to a broader view. You've taken control without them realizing it. That's not weakness. That's mastery. And it requires one thing above all else: emotional detachment from the outcome. Because the more you need to be agreed with, the more your energy will scream, "Validate me." And that scream, it pushes people away, even if your logic is perfect. So what's the Stoic alternative? Let go. Let the truth carry its own weight. Speak it softly. Then step back. And let time do the convincing, because influence always outlasts control. Control can make people obey. Influence makes them believe. Control wins the moment. Influence wins the person. That's what you're here to build. Not followers, but minds you've helped awaken. People who make better decisions, not because they were told to, but because something in them changed. And you didn't force it. You just planted it and walked away. That's what Marcus Aurelius meant when he said, "Don't waste time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." In the end, the most powerful influence you'll ever have, is not what you say, it's what you live. The calm in your eyes, the way you handle pressure, the way you ask questions instead of giving commands, the way you lead without ever needing to say the word leader. So remember this, the loud win arguments, the wise win minds, and you're not here to control, you're here to shift, to shape, to nudge the world silently towards strength, wisdom, and peace. And you'll never have to force it, because influence just is. Rule number 5, think in decades, act in silence. Don't rush to be impressive. Become undeniable. There's a quiet kind of person that most people overlook. They're not flashy. They're not loud. They don't rush to share what they're working on. They move in silence. They let people underestimate them. And yet somehow, they always end up ahead. Ever wonder how? It's not luck. It's not talent. It's not some hidden advantage. It's simply this. They're not playing for applause. They're playing for legacy. Most people are addicted to immediacy. The now, the win today, the quick like, the instant validation. They want to look successful even if they're not yet. They want to prove something even if they haven't built anything. And in doing that, they burn themselves out chasing a moment, while missing the bigger game completely. But you're not here to win the moment. You're here to master the timeline. Because what if the game isn't about how fast you can succeed, but how long you can stay focused? What if your real strength isn't in what you can show now, but in what you're willing to delay? This is where Stoic philosophy meets modern reality. Marcus Aurelius didn't build his legacy in a weekend. He didn't document his growth for attention. He journaled in silence. He governed with calm. He endured storms with grace because he saw beyond them. That's the essence of this rule. Think in decades, act in silence. Because when you think long-term, you stop chasing dopamine. You start building leverage. Let's talk about what that really means. Leverage is invisible. It's built behind the scenes. It's the skill no one knows you're learning, the habit no one sees you refining, the mindset you're sharpening while others are performing. You're building while they're broadcasting. That's the long game. And it's lonely at times because it feels like no one notices. And that's okay, because they're not supposed to. Silence is your camouflage. Patience is your edge. And when you combine both, you become untraceable. Think of it like this. Let's say you're in a workplace. Everyone's trying to be seen, talking over each other, making sure their voice is heard, fighting for a quick promotion. You're watching, studying the dynamics, building relationships, learning the gaps in the system, mastering the thing nobody else wants to do quietly. And then one day, when the right opportunity comes, you act. Not impulsively, not emotionally, but surgically, and the room goes quiet. Where did that come from, they ask. How did they do that, they wonder. But you won't need to explain, because the results will speak louder than the noise ever could. That's the power of delayed gratification. That's the reward for thinking in decades. And yes, there will be times when you'll want to shout your progress, when you'll want to prove your worth, when you'll wonder if being quiet means being forgotten. But trust me, you are not being forgotten. You are being forged. And every day you choose to stay focused instead of flashy. You're compounding something they can't see. And when it's time, you won't need to compete. You'll simply appear, and it will be too late for them to catch up. This is what I call the quiet rise. It's not glamorous. It's not Instagrammable, but it's unstoppable. Let's go. Practical 1. Stop announcing. Don't tell people what you're building. Build it. Don't seek congratulations. Seek consistency. R. Detach from timelines. Don't ask, how fast can I get there? Ask, what kind of person am I becoming? Along the way. 3. Reframe boredom. Repetition isn't punishment. It's preparation. C. Protect your vision. Not everyone needs to understand your pace, especially those who've traded direction for speed. The Stoics believed that we should become wise, not seem wise. That's your calling. Not to impress people now, but to become someone undeniable later. So let others chase applause. Let them burn out in the spotlight. You're in the shadows, quietly sharpening, quietly growing, quietly becoming the person they'll one day ask for advice, because you stayed the course when everyone else gave up for a quick win. You're not falling behind. You're building forward. And when it's your time, you'll move with such clarity and force, they won't even see it coming. That's the long game, and you're already playing it. Rule number 6. Emotional control equals dominance. You either hold the trigger or hand it to someone else. Let's be honest. Most of us weren't taught how to handle emotions. We were taught how to suppress them, how to explode with them, how to act out of them. But no one told us that emotions are tools. Used wisely, they give you power. Used poorly, they steal it from you. You've probably been there before. Someone says something that hits a nerve. You feel the heat rise in your chest. Your jaw tightens. Your thoughts spin. And before you know it, you've said something, done something that you immediately regret. And afterward, what do you tell yourself? They made me so mad. I couldn't help it. It just happened. But the Stoic response is clearer and harder. No one makes you feel anything unless you hand them the keys. Let me say that again. No one gets to drive your emotional state unless you let them behind the wheel. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And in that one line, he gave us the most powerful leverage anyone could ever have. Emotional sovereignty. Because in every room, every relationship, every battle, the person who can stay calm controls the tempo. Let me paint the picture. 2 people walk into a disagreement. One raises their voice, gestures wildly, rushes to defend their ego. The other listens, breathes, responds not to the insult, but to the moment. Guess who owns the room? It's not about being robotic. It's about being rooted, because when the storm hits, most people panic. But the Stoic anchors down. They observe instead of absorb. They respond instead of react. They breathe instead of break. And that's where dominance begins, not in control over others, but in unshakable control over yourself. Let's get practical. How do you actually build this kind of emotional discipline? Step 1. Label the emotion. When anger, fear, or pride shows up, don't deny it. Just call it what it is. This is anger. This is insecurity. This is ego. When you name it, you separate yourself from it. It's no longer you, it's something you're experiencing. And that one shift changes everything. Step 2. Breathe through it. Seriously. Slow breath equals a slow mind. Try this. Inhale for 4 seconds. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4. Hold again for 4. Box breathing. Do it 3 times and watch the chaos fade. Step 3. Insert time before action. Even 10 seconds can be the difference between control and collapse. Train yourself to pause. And in that pause, you regain power. Step 4. Ask yourself the 5x5 rule. Will this matter in 5 days, 5 months, 5 years? If the answer is no, drop it. It's not worth your peace. Step 5. Lower your voice. Not raise it, because nothing shakes the room like someone who stays calm while everyone else spirals. That calmness, that's not passive. It's dominance in disguise. And you don't need to dominate people. You need to dominate your inner response. Because when your emotions aren't on display for the world to see, you become unreadable, unshakable, and unstoppable. Here's a story I love. It's about a general who was ambushed in battle. His troops panicked. Everyone shouted orders. Chows erupted. But the general sat down and boiled tea. One of his officers yelled, "We're under attack." And the general calmly replied, "I make better decisions with a clear mind and warm hands." Minutes later, he led them to victory. Not because he reacted fast, but because he waited until the storm inside him passed before confronting the storm outside. That is stoicism in action. That is emotional control. Not detachment. Dominance. Now let me say something hard. Some people want to trigger you because your reaction feeds their ego. If you snap, they win. If you yell, they smile, because now they've taken control without lifting a finger. So stop giving people the keys to your nervous system. You are not here to dance to someone else's dysfunction. Instead, let your silence speak. Let your pause protect you. Let your calm unsettle them. Because true dominance isn't loud. It doesn't flinch. It doesn't rage. It breathes. And in that breath, it wins. So the next time someone tests your limits, don't give them access to your peace. Don't hand them the trigger. Hold it. Pause. Breathe. Choose. Because in a world where everyone is reacting, you'll be the one who commands. Rule number 7. Become strategically invisible, disappear. Not to be forgotten, but to become undeniable. Have you ever felt the urge to explain yourself, to announce your goals, to show people what you're building, to prove that you're working hard, that you're not falling behind, that your silence means progress, not failure? I get it. We all want to be seen. We all want someone to say, "I see your effort. I see your growth. You're on the right path." But here's the truth the world rarely tells you. Visibility comes with a price, and silence, when used with intention, is a shield. See, most people think if they don't post about it, it didn't happen. If they don't talk about it, they'll be forgotten. But that's not stoicism. That's ego whispering. Be seen now, or you won't matter later. The stoic whispers back, be still now, so they can't stop you later. Strategic invisibility isn't about hiding. It's about protecting. It's about moving in silence until your work becomes undeniable, so loud it speaks, without you needing to. Let's talk practically. When you overshare your plans, you invite resistance you're not ready for. You alert people who may not want to see you win. You open yourself to doubt, to judgment, to sabotage, not always from others, but often from your own fragile confidence. Because the more voices you let in early, the easier it is to second-guess yourself, to question whether you're doing enough, to rush the process just to prove you're progressing. But when you operate quietly, you build with freedom. You grow without pressure. You stay under the radar until the results make the noise for you. Think of it like this. There are 2 types of builders. One builds a house in the open, talking about it every day, posting every brick. They get attention, but they also get opinions, distractions, setbacks. The other builds deep underground. No one sees them. No one claps. No one praises. But one day, the ground shakes. The structure rises, and it's solid because the foundation was never rushed. never exposed, never compromised by outside noise. That's you. That's the strategy. Disappear to build. Reappear when it's too late to stop you. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Translation: stop performing, start becoming, and do it quietly. Now let me be clear. Strategic invisibility doesn't mean you live in isolation. It doesn't mean you hide from life. It means you choose where and when you reveal your growth. You don't show up to be noticed. You show up when it's time to deliver. Let others brag about progress. Let others chase applause. You're not here to impress anyone mid-process. You're here to surprise them with the outcome. And the most effective part, no one can block a move they didn't see coming. You can't defend against what you can't predict. So why give away your next step? Why show your cards before the game even starts? Keep your goals close, your timing quiet, your ambition private, and your strategy sacred. The Stoics were masters of this. They didn't walk into rooms declaring what they knew. They observed. They waited. They acted when it mattered not to be noticed, but to be effective. That's what you do when you've truly outgrown the need for recognition. You stop seeking confirmation. You start building conviction. So let them underestimate you. Let them think you've lost momentum. Let them say nothing's happening. You know what's happening. You're working in the shadows. You're sharpening behind the curtain. You're becoming the threat no one sees coming. And when the time is right, you won't need to say a word. You'll show up fully formed, and it will be too late for anyone to catch up. That's the quiet revenge of the disciplined, the ones who stopped talking about becoming great because they were too busy becoming it. Let's close with this. You don't owe the world your updates. You don't owe anyone your progress report. You don't need to post your potential, because the real ones, they'll know. Not because you told them, but because they felt it when you arrived. So, disappear for a season. Study, heal, train, build. And when it's time to return, let the results announce your name, because in a world obsessed with being seen, your silence will be your strategy, and your invisibility, your weapon. Rule number 8. Master strategic humility. Sometimes the quietest one in the room is the most prepared to strike. Let's talk about something that feels upside down in today's world. We live in a culture where everyone wants to stand out, where confidence is confused with performance, and silence is mistaken for weakness. We're told, show them who you are. Take up space. Dominate the room. But here's a Stoic truth no one tells you. The strongest people don't need to dominate. They let others believe they're stronger until it's too late to stop them. That's not fear. That's strategic humility. See, most people think humility is shrinking yourself, downplaying your worth, avoiding the spotlight out of insecurity. But real humility, the kind that's built on clarity, discipline, and long game thinking, it's a smokescreen. You're not hiding who you are. You're choosing not to reveal it too early. Because when people underestimate you, they expose themselves. They get comfortable. They reveal their hand. They say too much. They assume too little. And you sit there, listening, watching, smiling, not to manipulate, but to gather power without ever having to reach for it. Let me give you a picture. You walk into a room, everyone's posturing, flexing credentials, dropping titles, speaking louder to seem smarter. You stay quiet. You ask questions. You nod thoughtfully. You make room for their ego. And without knowing it, they start to lean toward you. Why? Because you don't feel like a threat. You feel safe, respectful, curious. But what they don't know is that you're a weapon, sharpened in silence, studied in solitude, disciplined enough not to need recognition in order to execute that strategic humility. And it works everywhere, in business, in relationships, in conflict, even in moments of crisis. Because when the moment comes to strike, to speak, to lead, to solve the thing no one else can, you move with such clarity, such calm, such force, that it feels like thunder from nowhere. People blink and say, "Wait, I didn't know you had that in you." And you just smile, because they weren't supposed to know. Not yet. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." In other words, while others show off, you set up. While they perform, you prepare. While they impress, you position. Tactic. Downplay your strengths. Ask questions instead of making declarations. Speak last. Let others shine while you sharpen. Because the quieter you are, the less resistance you invite, the more trust you build. And trust. That's the deepest form of leverage. Let's break that down. When people trust you, they open up. They reveal things they wouldn't say to someone who's trying to outshine them. They let their guard down. They share their real thoughts, real fears, real motives. And you never had to demand anything. You just had to stay soft on the surface and sharp underneath. Now let's get brutally honest. You will be tempted to prove yourself, especially when someone talks down to you, especially when you're overlooked, dismissed, doubted. Your ego will scream, show them you're better. Show them you're not weak. Make them regret underestimating you. But here's the stoic move. You resist. You let them believe they've already won, because they'll stop watching you. And that's the gift. Underestimation is camouflage. It's freedom. It's your invisibility cloak in a world addicted to appearances. And when you do rise, when you do lead, when your results finally speak, no one saw it coming. And they can't stop what's already in motion. So what's the lesson here? You don't need to dominate the room. Let others talk over you. Let them think you're just nice. Let them feel superior. You're not playing for validation. You're playing for position. And when the moment comes, strike, clean, calm, unapologetic. Because humility isn't weakness. It's a silent weapon. And the best part, they never see it coming. Rule number 9, weaponize observation before action. The smartest move is the one no one saw you prepare for. Let's slow down for a second, because this rule, it's not loud. It's not flashy. It doesn't feel like power at first glance. But it is, and it's one of the most dangerous kinds of power you can ever develop. Observation. In a world that rushes to act, you wait. In a world that talks without thinking, you watch. In a world that plays checkers, you're already studying the chessboard. Because the truth is, most people reveal far more than they realize. They think they're hiding insecurity, but it leaks through tone. They think they're in control, but their eyes twitch when the pressure builds. They say one thing, but their energy says something completely different. And while they do that, you're silent, still, listening to every word and to every gap between the words. That's where the real information lives. Not in what they say, but in what they avoid, in what they rush, in what they over-explain, in what they don't expect you to notice. This isn't paranoia. It's presence. You're not being overly analytical. You're being precise. Because when you observe long enough, you begin to see patterns, how people move, how they defend their insecurities, How they change tone when they lie. How they stumble when they're bluffing. You see their habits, their defenses, their gaps. And once you see those, you don't have to overpower anyone. You just have to know when to act. That's the Stoic strategy. Don't move first. Don't show your strength. Just watch. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "To understand the true quality of people, you must look into their minds and examine their pursuits and aversions." Translation: watch what they chase, watch what they avoid, and you'll know exactly what controls them. Let me give you something practical. You're in a meeting. Everyone's trying to impress. There's posturing, rushing, pitching, pressure. You stay still. You ask key questions. You take notes, not just of what's being said, but how it's being said. Someone makes a bold claim, but their voice wavers. Someone talks fast but skips over the data. Someone interrupts but gets nervous when questioned. You don't react. You don't challenge. You just observe and file it away. Because when it's time to speak, you already know where to strike. Not with aggression, but with surgical precision. This is what happens when you delay. Decode. Then act. That's the tactic. And the effect. Every move you make is calculated. Every word has weight. Every pause has purpose. You become the one who moves last, but finishes first. Here's what separates the powerful from the impulsive. The impulsive want to be heard. The powerful want to understand. The impulsive react. The powerful read. The impulsive strike at noise. The powerful strike at truth. And because they wait, they win. Let me remind you of this. Silence is not absence. It's strategy. You're not stalling. You're studying. And that patience, that composure, it makes you dangerous. Because while they thought you were passive, you were collecting patterns. While they underestimated your quiet, you were downloading every move. And when the time comes, you won't make noise. You'll make impact. Here's how to live this rule every day. Slow the conversation down. Ask more questions. Let others speak first. People can't help but reveal themselves when they talk long enough. Watch micro expressions. The face always speaks before the mouth does. Raised brows, tightened lips, shifting eyes, don't ignore them. Listen for inconsistency. Most people rehearse what they want to say, but not how they say it. When tone doesn't match message, there's something deeper underneath. Let others underestimate your silence. They'll think you're disengaged, but silence doesn't mean ignorance. It means you're processing the entire room. Let me close with this. The loudest person wants to be seen. The quietest person wants to see everything. Be that person, because when you know how to read people, you don't need to rush. You don't need to fight. You don't even need to speak. You wait. And then, when the time is right, you move once. Clean, final, and unanswerable. That's the mark of someone who didn't just act out of emotion. They waited, they watched, and then they won. Outsmart, outlast, outplay. You don't need the spotlight. You're building the stage. If you've made it this far, you already know. This isn't about ego. This isn't about being the loudest, the fastest, or the one who wins arguments. It's about becoming someone so grounded, so unreadable, so unshakably disciplined that you no longer have to prove anything. Because in the end, real power doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't compete for attention. It simply waits and moves when it's ready. Let everyone else rush. Let them fight for likes, for credit, for spotlight. You you're playing a different game. You're building leverage in silence. You're sharpening your edge where no one's looking. You're not chasing validation. You're creating inevitability. That's the Stoic way. And if you've been misunderstood for being too quiet, if they've overlooked you, underestimated you, passed you by, good, let them, because while they're burning out trying to be seen, you're conserving energy, you're collecting insight, you're building something they can't interrupt, because they didn't even see it coming. The loudest person in the room is usually the weakest. They react, they perform, they seek external confirmation to fill an internal void. But you respond, you plan, you wait, because you know that every reaction they bait out of you is a piece of your power. Hand it over, and you're done giving that away. From now on, you pose, you breathe, you listen, and when the time comes, you move once. Clean and final. No flinching, no explaining, no noisy. That's the kind of power that makes people remember you long after the noise has died down. Let them fight for position. Let them scramble for applause. You're not chasing attention. You're building the empire behind the curtain, and when the curtain finally rises, your presence will say everything your words never needed to. So as you move forward, remember this: outsmart them, not by being clever, but by being composed. Outlast them not by racing, but by resting in discipline. Outplay them not through chaos, but through clarity, because emotional control isn't just a virtue, it's an advantage. Silence isn't absence, it's strategy. And invisibility isn't weakness, it's preparation. Marcus Aurelius didn't need applause to validate his leadership. Epictetus didn't need to argue his worth. They lived with power because they embodied it quietly. And so can you. From the first rule to the last, this entire philosophy boils down to this: don't react, respond. Don't flex, strategize. Don't rush. Move with reason. Let others burn out in the spotlight. You'll still be standing calm, precise, and unstoppable, because in a world addicted to showing off, true dominance doesn't speak, it executes.